Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me today as I ramble into the aether. And maybe you're here listening, maybe you're not, maybe you just need company, maybe you're just trying to sleep and you want to hang out. That's a-okay in my book. So today I wanted to kind of just get into some spooky stuff because that's generally where the fun house is going to be going. So, again, I hope you're doing okay. I hope, with our last topic, you feel a little easier about, hanging out and joining me as we dive deep into some spooky, spooky stuffs. And, so today, the premise of the episode is going to be some personal, scary stories of mine. Ooh, spooky. I'm going to share a story of mine when I was rather little. So, growing up, my father would regularly go over to my grandparents' house, and they had a very old house. Um, right in little old colonial America or New England here in Rhode Island. So, growing up, my father would go over there and maintenance the lawn. He would maintenance just the general property. Like, he'd show up periodically, mow their lawn, stuff like that. Just some yard work, housework. And I think at the time I must have been like 6 or 7, maybe younger. The house always kind of gave me the creeps a little bit. I don't know. I'm generally a skeptic, but I also want to believe in every and anything paranormal. I want to believe it. I'm a lot like Fox Mulder in that sense. So, now, as a kid here, my father one day had brought me over to my grandmother's house, and we had some food that they left us in the fridge. I had microwaved a plate of, I don't know, it was like chicken and rice, whatever, that's arbitrary. But, so he goes outside, he says, you can go watch TV, play the Nintendo, the good old classic NES. But, so yeah, I didn't like being alone in that house, period. Like I said, it always kind of gave me the creeps. So I'm nuking the food, and I heard a thud upstairs. I didn't really think much of it, because old creaky house, ooh. So, whatever, I was still unsettled because I was little, and I've always been riddled to the core with anxiety. This was no exception. And, again, I'm sitting there, I'm microwaving the food. I get the food, I pop it on the table. I'm just kind of awkwardly sitting there watching my dad out the window, and then I heard another thud. Now, mind you, I heard this as clear as day. After the second one, the first time, like, okay, second time, all right, what's going on? And then I heard a third thud, and I was like, okay, this is a little much coming from the upstairs there. And then I heard directly above me footsteps. That's not an exaggeration. This isn't some, BS that I'm just spitting out into the aether. This is a story of mine that I remember very well. So the footsteps started walking. Like, that's not just the wind blowing something over. That's not just, uh, okay, like maybe somebody was home and we didn't realize it. Like, that was my initial thought. So the footsteps started descending the staircase that led to the downstairs from a hallway that would lead to the living room, which was connected to the kitchen where I was. So I heard the steps. They started slowly descending, and then they started going quick. Dut, 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 dut. So I ran outside, and I had screamed to my dad that there was somebody in the house, and he immediately barrel-assed his way indoors, expecting some kind of confrontation. Like he had yelled to see if like it was my grandfather or my grandmother, but the cars weren't there. We already knew they weren't, but naturally, like, what else are you gonna do? So there was nobody up there. There was no trinkets that had fallen down the stairs. There was none of that. There was nothing on the floor. Again, there was nothing on the stairs. He went upstairs, checked all the rooms, came back down. I was shaking at that point. I was just freaking terrified. And, it was, I guess, at that moment that I had started believing in the paranormal. Like, again, growing up, like, I was always into the monster movies. I was always into, like, the X-Files. And, like, I wanted to believe that these things were real. And I mean, I still do. That's really never changed. But so from that moment on, going forward, I never wanted to be alone. Period. I already didn't want to, just because I would scare easily. But that time was a pure exception. Again, it must have been like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 or 7. It was one of those single digits. And I never forgot that story. Even telling it now, I remember like the state of being that I was in, and that that punished my poor childhood brain. Perhaps in a later episode, I'll even get deeper into that. Just like growing up in like a spooky house and things like that. I mean, that was my grandmother's, so you know. But there was another story here that I wanted to share. This one, however, is a lot later in life. So this one, actually, let's see, I think I was like 25, maybe younger. No, it was younger. I think I was 24. So at the time, my partner and I were taking a vacation that landed us in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So, as you know, a lot of history there, lots of spooky stuff. Living here in New England, that's also something I'm going to be covering a lot in further episodes, just like the New England history, mostly the paranormal end of it, because, there's a lot of controversial history there that perhaps I'll get into, but right now I'm just trying to keep it strictly to spooky stuff and have a good time with that. So, anyways, I digress. Going back to this story. So we were in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The night that we were crashing there, we ended up going on a ghost tour, which, go figure. And it was this cool little lantern tour where they'd walk us around like where the Plymouth Rock is, and the harbor there, the neighborhoods, all these historical house locations, and they would talk about the people that owned the houses previously, how far back they go, little tidbits of information here and there. And we went to one of the oldest cemeteries in the country. Ooh. So, anyways, the ghost tour was a lot of fun. You got a lot of good history there, a lot of rich history, a lot of some, like, I remember one of the things was, like, there was axe murders that had gone down in one of the houses that was there. Like, it was just, if you're into paranormal, spooky, macabre stuff, this was your cup of tea. And so anyways, later that night, I had, we got back late. I passed out. I was exhausted from all that walking and whatnot, like, because the ghost tour was late. I don't think we got home until like 1 or 2 in the morning. And so lay down, and at one point I wake up, and I heard people in the room. I I didn't really know what was going on. I thought maybe it was like the early morning and we just had the cleaning ladies in, like whatever, people got to do their thing. I was still exhausted. I didn't open my eyes or anything. And then like they were being loud, like they were goofing off, joking around, like whatever. It wasn't until I heard one of them turn on a vacuum cleaner that I was like, okay, all right, this is a little much, like I'm trying to sleep here. Like I'm the paying customer. Come on. And but it was at that moment I realized I couldn't move. I had never experienced anything like this in my life. I could not move. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't open my eyes. I couldn't. Well, at that point, I don't know whether it was just I didn't want to open my eyes or what, but there was this sense of panic that ended up gripping me. And I kept trying to move my hand to get a hold of my partner. I had started paying a little more attention at that moment, though, to what was being said by what I thought were these cleaning ladies, and it was just garbled noise. Like it was like a white noise, or it was just it was nothing. It was all these things trying to sound like something, and it was nothing. And then I heard what sounded like the door slam, and these voices just went cold and quiet. But then I heard this aggressive, angry whispering, like it. I somehow knew it belonged to this like old woman, this angry, evil old woman, and she was just in my ear whispering. Like it felt like at that point my conscious brain was being pulled out of my head, and there was this like wavelength of I don't know, like a layer of reality almost that was I was picking up on. Like I didn't know how to interpret this information. I didn't know what it was I was really feeling, how I was feeling it. It scared the ever living crap out of me. And I mean, even now, just reflecting on it is super, super. Ugh, gives me that jitter. Turn into a little jitterbug. But yeah, I ended up finally waking up. I got a hold of myself. I gasped for air. I woke up my partner. I explained everything. I ended up going for a jog around the harbor, just reflecting on this. I ended up doing some research, and I had stumbled across, sleep paralysis, which this is a clear example of sleep paralysis. But further, upon looking up the evil woman aspect of it, like the old angry woman that sent me into a panic, I came across this thing called old hag syndrome, which is a phenomenon that rests within sleep paralysis, where it is exactly that, like specifically that. I encourage you to do your own research on it. Maybe you yourself have experienced this. I have comments open if you want to leave your own personal scary stories, or I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear every and anything. Scary stories. I feel like bring us all together in the best possible way, especially like paranormal, supernatural, whatever it is, you name it. That does mark the end of this episode for now, so I'm gonna leave you, but there's going to be plenty more where that came from, and you are all wonderful. I will see you again next time on The Fun House.